What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the GLL Apex Legends series. It's time to get the second half of the EMEA region side of the competition underway and see who'll be reigning champion at the end of the day. My name is Parla and I am your desk host, and I'm still joined by Glitter and Onset. We've got him back on the desk. Swap Bravo back to casting with Dreadnought. Why don't we say hello to those guys as well and get the show on the road. They should be ready to say hello. Yeah, there they are. Look at those pretty faces.
I'm preparing from us. We are ready for some games.
Yeah.
Today we're gonna really see things kind of how they really shake out. I think we got a good warm-up yesterday in both regions, but it's time to award some prize money, Dread.
Yeah, and I'm super excited in the fact that the teams thriving aren't necessarily only the invited ones, right? And it's in both regions, and just the fact that we're getting some teams that we knew had a lot of potential, but it feels like this is their kind of breakout moment really coming to light has been super exciting here. And day number 2, I feel like we're going to have the conclusion, right? We'll know for a fact where these people belong.
Yeah, and the teams that did step up yesterday, they need to, right, there's 6 more games for each region. They really need to step it up and continue that run if they want to come away with some prize money.
I absolutely agree. We saw some trends beginning to develop across the 2 regions in terms of the scoreboard. So now there are some teams not quite in contention. Then we've got a good plethora of teams still prepared and possibly having a chance of taking the the virtual trophy.
The title.
Yeah, exactly. Having a chance of getting $10,000 for first place, $50,000 across both regions. It's exciting stuff, to say the least, Glitter.
Absolutely, and I'm really kind of wondering how the teams are going to change up their playstyle if they're at the bottom of the leaderboard today, because if they're past the top 10, they have to make some dramatic changes to their decision-making or to their playstyle in general in order to kind of recuperate a little bit from being down from yesterday.
Yeah, I think we almost saw that starting yesterday. We look at the North American region, Team Secret. You know, they dropped onto Sentinels at the start of the game. They won that. They managed to kill TSM as well. And I like that idea that they've taken the initiative early and they're not leaving it till today. They wanted to kind of upset things and maybe give teams like Sentinels something to think about today when they drop into the map for the first time. So I think we've already seen that start to develop, but obviously there's teams who have got to make points up, and that's going to make everything a little bit more crazy.
Indeed. Let's take a look at the schedule so all of you at home know exactly what is coming up. We're starting off with our first game very shortly. It should be at about maybe 5 to 10 minutes from now, and then we'll have 5 other matches to go. Yeah, it should be starting about now at 6 p.m. CET. Then we've got 5 other matches after that, culminating with the 12th match of the entire tournament for EMEA at 9:45 p.m. As you can see, yesterday we saw Papega Squadron getting the first win, then Virtus Pro kicked with the third. Alliance got the most placement points in our 4th match, but it was LG that actually got the overall most points in the 4th game. RecPac took the 5th, and LG won out in the final 6th match of the day, which meant they were at the top of the leaderboard by the end of the day. This is our point system and prize pool. Do not forget, if you finish in first, you get 12 points. If you go down between 16th and 20th, you won't get any, and you get a point per kill. $50,000 across both regions, $25,000 per region, which means $10,000 for a first place finish. A lot of cash on the line, as well as, of course, bragging rights. This is, the leaderboard. That is for NA, everybody. We'll switch that up shortly. That's not the EMEA leaderboard. We're getting a bit ahead of ourselves there. It was T1. We can talk about T1 ended up finishing
there we go.
up top, but there we go. Interestingly, though, if you did catch that leaderboard, our 2 first place finishers, T1 and Luminosity, were only split by a single point. And that's kind of what we were referencing before with regards to trends. Part of it anyway. Either way, 2nd place, RecPac. 3rd, Kick Esports Club. Yeah, if we're looking at those top 8 or so, maybe top 6, I mean, it's hard to say at this point. If Luminosity start having a downtrend, this could be anyone's match in that top 6 to 8. I don't want to say 10th, Glitter, Onset.
You can't say that before we even start. You can't just cast or curse them before the games kick off.
No, I don't mean to curse anyone. I'm just trying to be realistic, guys.
I think that they might be ready going into today. I have high expectations for LG, but I also have high expectations for Wizen. You were loving Wizen yesterday.
I was loving kind of the point that they were getting to in the games. It was just they weren't able to close. They weren't able to win any particular games or get that top 2 placement, which is why they are sat where they are. But the fact that they're consistently making endgame, it's nothing but positive news for them. And I think as one of those qualifying rosters as well, that's something that they can be very proud of in day number 1. If they can just fix a few mistakes that they made in day 1 into day 2, and they've had the opportunity to do that. Every single team has had the opportunity to do that and go back and watch the VODs. There's a real opportunity for them to maybe surprise a few people today and maybe upset the likes of Luminosity and Reciprocity.
Just to catch you guys up at home, another of the trends that we sort of saw was first place finishes generally have about 20 plus points on average, but low 20s. And so if you are at about that 40-point mark, and considering LG are at 73, you know, do the math roughly, and there is a chance for those teams with that point score around the 40 mark that they could definitely still be in contention.
That's why I'm hoping that they try to change it up a little bit and do something wild. Maybe drop directly on top of LG and try to take them out of points contention immediately. It is risky, yes, but do you have a whole lot to lose? I mean, you've got 6 games to play with a little bit. Some you can maybe play more conservatively, and some you can take some chances with.
Especially with the way that the LG were dropping yesterday. Remember, they were splitting on their drop. So one person was playing Epicenter, and then one was rotating out to, were rotating out to Refinery for their first drop. So even if you pick off one of them, that puts them in a 2v3 situation. I wonder, looking back on the VODs, not only have teams realized that, but maybe LG have realized that coming into day 2, and they might play a little bit safer on their drop.
Looking at both regions, do you think they will have been watching each other and picking up anything that they could implement into their own games?
100%.
Yeah. And I think that there's always like a little bit of rivalry, you know, when the regions try to, because they're all competitive, they try to best each other. And I think that we got, or NA got a little bit higher overall kills, or as far as like the top kill amounts for their bracket. But EMEA, I feel like, was overall just a little bit more consistent with some of their teams because of their slightly more conservative playstyle. Maybe they want to try and match with some of those kills, and they need the kills anyways for those points.
Yeah, it's kind of a bit of a juxtaposition as far as how Apex is concerned. You know, you have to get points on the board, but to do that, you have to last long enough in the game to allow yourself to engage in enough battles. So it's kind of that, you know, rolling the dice. Do you land on someone? Do you take an early fight? If you lose that, you're out. You don't get any points, but you have to take that fight in order to get some points on the board. Then if you do place well, those kill points are going to start racking up, and you can make up those little distances. And that's kind of the beauty of the format. You can always find yourself in with a chance, regardless of how day 1 went. 6 games, there's a lot of points still to play for.
Our top team from EMEA, Luminosity, they did a great job of picking the right fights and often finishing on top. You guys both noticed that yesterday, correct? That
was actually insanity. They just chose the right times to rotate and push through teams, and they dominated every single fight that they took. They knew when... did you notice in the geyser ending, they were literally strafing past each other behind the Gibraltar to use his shield as their own shield next to the bubble. So they would go in and out of the bubble and then past the Gibraltar. So they had like double shields to shoot behind. It was just clean. It was so clean.
It's one of the things we're seeing a lot with the Gibraltar usage now, that you have that arm shield. You're seeing him always going first. Another example of a team doing that yesterday was Sentinels on that push to TSM, where they completely wiped them, took them out first in the game, and it's always the Gibby that's going to be going in first because it has that extra HP with that arm shield. But I mean, Luminosity, just to kind of highlight their team fighting and how good they are, their baiting and switching was amazing. And a lot of times, only one player would be downed in a team fight, and there would be 2 alive. However, if they found themselves in that situation with a back against the wall, 1 player alive, they would still win the fight somehow. So they've got that clutch factor as well as that incredible teamwork.
Now, yesterday, we also addressed the fact that the teams who at this point are pretty much out of contention might start playing a bit differently, might start taking more risks, or just messing with the other teams. And Onset, maybe you can start us off, since one of your favorite teams, quite low in the leaderboard, are in that category.
They are. The Potatoes. Yeah, I kind of picked them because I'm a big Shiv fan and I love watching his stream. He's a very entertaining guy, but they're going to have to change something today, right? The issue that I saw yesterday was they didn't seem to have that kind of cohesion that a lot of these more established rosters have. And, you know, they're a new roster. They haven't been playing together, you know, in scrims. They haven't been playing at that top level against some of the top teams. So it's no surprise to see it. The individual skill is there. And all of these teams, I would say, that are sort of 10th to 20th at the moment, they really do have a chance of not only upsetting with their own placement, but they can upset the top of the leaderboards. And that's the scary thing for the teams that are there at the moment. They've got to be on their toes, so aware of something a little bit weird happening in these early games. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. That's the one thing I'm looking forward to. What kind of carnage is going to kick off and how early it's going to kick off.
Glitter, any particular type of carnage you expect from the teams lower down the leaderboard?
they're not 100% all the way down at the bottom, but Pepega Squadron started off really, really strong yesterday and then kind of fell off towards the end. I think they're in 8th right now. They're right on the cusp.
On the cusp.
And I would really, really like to see something come out of them. They clearly have the potential and the ability to do very well in this bracket. They just kind of needed a little bit of a reset, you know, after the early games. I think that they could pop off, though.
Do you guys think there's a good chance that a lot of these teams are going to completely adapt based on the gameplay that took place yesterday? Or do you think we're going to see similar sort of strategies and rotations?
It's an interesting question because, you know, is it a case where some teams are going to double bluff? Is it going to be that sort of thing where they've looked back and they've thought, okay, we've seen teams might be looking at us doing this, therefore we're not going to do this, we're going to adapt. And then that team is maybe who, for example, when I'm talking about Luminosity, someone might decide to challenge Epicenter early on, and then before they know it, Epicenter don't have the best loot in the world, a difficult rotation out, and Luminosity could kind of be thinking 2 steps ahead instead of that 1 step ahead. So it really is an interesting game of cat and mouse. And that's why I think these first couple of games are important, because I feel the lobby's going to play pretty similar to what we saw yesterday in these first games, just why people find their feet again. But it's when we get to those, the next game, the last 4 games, that's when things have to start mixing up. And that's where people like Luminosity and Reciprocity are going to be scared.
I like that when the circumstances change. You know, you're reaching the end of the tournament, and in Battle Royale format, there's more of an incentive to act and play differently. What about yourself, Glitter?
I mean, you also have to make the decision of like when is too late to actually make that substantial difference in your gameplay. Is, you know, trying to play the same way you did for the first couple games, you know, is that safe? Like, are those points potentially, if you lose those points, is that okay? Do you still have enough cushion to go fully wild with 4? Do you want to leave it to the last 2? Is that even going to do anything at that point? There's a lot that has to go into the strategy portion of today as far as figuring out the best way to elevate themselves on the leaderboard. But the other thing that I really like about EMEA, and I think makes the gameplay a little bit more exciting, in my opinion, when we were watching yesterday, is that they have a much wider variety in their legend choice, so that their end games were just wild.
It's very difficult to predict what's going to happen in those end games because of it, because you're kind of looking for patterns as a commentator, as an analyst, and what we've seen before, and you're kind of surprised sometimes with what we see. But sort of going back to the point of teams that are going to mix things up, obviously that's going to affect the likes of Reciprocity, is going to affect the likes of Luminosity. I would say out of those 2 teams, the one team who can probably deal with that is Luminosity from the way they played yesterday. They were playing edge of the circle a lot more than Reciprocity. So put yourself in the position where you're one of those teams and you're in that end zone fight, and Reciprocity rotated early. They're in the middle of that zone. Everyone's going to be looking at them. They're going to be thinking, there's Reciprocity, right? And they're going to be lasering on them to try and take them out before they get that top 5 placement. Whereas Luminosity are playing a little bit slower. They're playing that edge circle, and they're not going to have anyone behind them and taking as many angles. And I think it's a smarter way to play here when you're especially at the top of that leaderboard. It kind of negates the risk a little bit.
We definitely saw a lot of aggression coming out on the NA side of the tournament. I think having the higher kill games overall. Do you think Europe today, there are going to be more teams trying to frag out?
I hope so. That's fun for us. I mean, you enjoy that, right?
Of course.
Right? I mean, that's what we want to see. That's the whole point of us being here, is giving them the opportunity to showcase their competitive abilities. Obviously, part of that is like the gun skill, but it also, there were so many games where the person who actually won game 1 or whatever didn't end up in the overall first place position because they didn't end up with those higher kill counts. It's super illustrative of how important those kills are. And if you know, even if you're in a bad position, say you're like in potentially 6th or 7th place, you might just, and one of your teammates gets full killed or something, that might be the one moment where they just kind of go for it. They're like, you know what? This isn't looking so good, and there's a ton of people in front of us. Take the opportunity to third party, try to get those last few kills in if you can, and then start over next game.
Yeah, I think one thing that maybe contributed to the higher kill totals of the top teams yesterday in North America compared to the region we're starting with here, EMEA, is that when we were getting to those end circles in North America, a lot of the times there's still 20 teams left. I felt like a few teams are dying on rotation in the EMEA region. Now, if you put yourself in the position in North America in those lobbies, if you get the prime position in that end circle, you're going to have easy targets. You're going to be able to rack up kills on people who are rotating late, people who are taking shots from other teams. And you kind of leave yourself in a position where if you place in that top 2, you're pretty much guaranteed to get at least 6 kills, 9 kills along the way, just because of the close quarters and the lack of cover that a lot of these end circles are providing.
I think that is a good point to notice, is that I wouldn't say it's accurate to say that the pace was completely different between the two regions. But at the same time, it did feel like at the end of the games for NA that we'd see more teams alive. So I'm not sure if just engagements were happening differently or the way each team is structuring how they move around the map affected that. But maybe Glitter, you have more thoughts on it?
Well, it just does come down to what you're talking about as far as like the way that you're choosing to rotate with the zone as well. It could be that there were more similar play styles on NA and EU, but in like a different sense. So NA could have been more centrally focused where everybody was trying to get to the center zone, and that's why they all ended up in center zone together at the same time, and that's where those fights occurred towards the end. Whereas maybe EMEA has more teams rotating on the outside, and they could potentially be running into each other as they go earlier on in like mid game, and that might be why those kills are happening earlier for this region.
Yeah, I mean, because we'd still see like exchanges and where two teams are going head to head earlier on in the American matches, but they didn't end up with squads getting wiped out. Whereas EMEA would see these earlier engagements that sometimes would end with one team having to lose a player or two or maybe more.
I would say that's down to a decision being made on prioritizing rotation towards end circle over picking up early kill points in North America. They would rather back a team down so that they have that path and that safe passage into an end circle, into the next circle to set up, and then be able to gatekeep that next team that comes in and have a better position. Whereas I felt in EMEA, they saw it as an opportunity if they got damaged to try and finish those kills. The issue with that is you present the opportunity for third party, and that's my gripe sometimes on rotation for a few of these teams is they get caught up in a battle for slightly too long. And I feel like there's a kind of a pristine amount of time to be able to fight a team before you have to give up on it, back down, and maybe look to rotate before the circle comes in.
I agree. Guys, we're just waiting for a couple more players to join the server, then we'll be ready to go and get everything underway. Until then, I guess I can ask you, like, how are you feeling on day 2? I'm excited.
I'm fine. I'm chipper.
He was working out before. What are you talking about? He feels great.
I can see. Looking swole right now.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
I like your jacket.
Thanks,
Looking
man.
great.
If anyone wants to join my biker gang, applications are open on www.parlersbikergang.com.
To be confirmed.
That's
actually
okay.
There's a little asterisk next to
Don't Google that because it's not a real. It's not my website, and if it is a real website, I have
no affiliation.
It's not my. Yeah,
just
I have
cover
no
yourself
affiliation
legally
with
very
it.
quickly there.
Is the jacket required though?
Required for what? To join the gang?
Yeah.
Oh,
do we get one?
I brought one.
Sure.
I have a leather jacket with me.
Okay.
So if my application, which I've already submitted, is in
I
fact
can't do the whole leather
accepted,
jacket thing. It's not. I can't pull it off like you.
Yeah, you could.
I
You
feel
look
like
like a
you
proper
could.
biker boy, man.
yeah.
This is true.
But either way, I'm officially part of Bravo squad now as well.
Oh my God!
Bravo.
Don't encourage him.
I'm trying to get them as hyped as possible. So, guys, again, this is my first time meeting this crew of people working on Apex, and I've come to discover quite a few interesting quirks. So we've got Dregsistentialism, who's Dreadnought.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you guys saw how he finished the stream yesterday, but he posed like a really interesting philosophical question. It was very deep, and it kind of left us.
We're still thinking about it.
Yeah, we're still thinking about it now. And then we've got Bravo. He's repping the Bravo squad. You know, I'm just enjoying being part of the crew, really.
Well, we're happy to have you here, Paul. I think you fit in quite nicely, to be honest with you. You've got the character to kind of deal with us all, I think is the best way to put it. And
that's my character over there.
I mean, your girl, sorry, excuse me, is behind you right there.
Good old Wraith. We're wraithing it out.
We're wraithing out.
Yep. Anyway, so any other points you'd like to raise with any of the other teams, guys? But maybe some of the teams that you think have a chance of putting on a performance that they maybe didn't have yesterday?
I feel like Alliance is another team to look out for. Not only did they do well in the qualifiers as the highest point-earning team, but they ended up doing very well for themselves in a couple of the games, whether it was Game 4 that they actually won due to their positioning, or just generally kind of playing conservatively and smart. So as long as they, have everything good to go for today, I think they should be able to do well.
I agree with you. I think the two teams that I'm watching today are teams that I was expecting to do better yesterday that didn't perform. One is Gamers Origin.
And the other is Potatoes.
3 teams. 3 teams that I'm looking to do better. That's the thing, like, did I expect them to do better, or am I just enjoying the name and, that kind of thing? But I think that, Gamers Origin were such a standout performer in Poland and kind of surprised a few people with how consistent and how good they were. Didn't have a good day by their own standards yesterday. Want more to see more from them. The other team that I'm looking at that need to improve a little bit, who had some good games and some bad games, VP, they're kind of on the edge of that kind of bubble, and they need a few big games. And there was a few opportunities yesterday for them to put big points on the board that they couldn't convert from. So I need to see a little bit more from them if they want to potentially, pick up a championship today. One other team who's really disappointed yesterday, sorry guys, by the way, G2. G2, I need to see more from you.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with that.
The VP match, the second match that they won, was very confusing for us at the end because we've only got the streams from each of the players, and then we end up seeing the clip of how VP won.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic, right? Glitter, what exactly happened?
That was the Overlook finish.
Yep.
So what we couldn't see from our end for the stream was that VP had a zip across the top of that final little pinpoint zone, and they were just zipline jumping, letting everybody else fight it out down at the bottom, waited for the right opportunity, dropped down, and were able to clean up all the rest of those kills and take home the win.
It was Taylor, I believe, who managed to do that, and it was just one of those things where you're kind of watching everything unfold and just ziplining across and then waiting for that prime moment to drop and finish off that final kill. So we were talking about lack of Wraith a lot at the time yesterday for VP. Who needs a Wraith if you can hover above the zone, right?
Right.
Indeed, but Wraith plays also were a big factor yesterday. Hal on for the American
So
Thank you
side
for
of
bringing it up.
competition. That
I've
was
been wanting to
beautiful.
We're
talk
supposed to save it for later.
We should show it every
We
single
might as well
opportunity.
just get
every
it out
opportunity
now,
that
right?
We can talk about it. I mean,
It was good.
It was. I still don't know if it was Hal being brilliant, and this is slightly controversial, opinion on it, or if T1 threw so hard that they will never want to see that clip again. Unfortunately, they're going to have to see it again.
It's always a combination of the two, right? It's
exactly.
always a combination of the two. In a clutch situation where I think the odds should be stacked against you, it's a mixture of personal skill, will, and determination, and the enemy team not being perfectly optimal.
Yeah,
I think that's
I would
fair,
say
right?
that Hal did everything he possibly could in the best possible way to win that game.
Yeah.
But if I see that Mastiff shot again from Kurt, it's difficult to watch. It's one of those where he hits that, we're not even talking about this as an opportunity.
It happens
It is
to
what it is.
everyone. You can't be perfect all the time.
Yeah, we all whiff sometimes.
Speak for yourself. I've never missed in my life.
100%.
definitely
Mr.
true.
100% over there. Sure thing. Yeah, everybody's still waiting on those players to join, so I guess we can continue to chitter-chatter on the desk. Actually, we have to send the casters straight away. It seems that now, suddenly, we are ready to go. Thanks for joining us on the desk. We'll see you later. For now, let's head on over to the Bravo squad. Bravo and Dreadnought.
Thanks so much, Paula. Ready to get into these games? That's good news for us. We were hoping to get into the games as fast as we can, and that's exactly what we're going to do. This will be the conclusion to the European bracket here at the GLL Apex Legends Series inaugural event. And Dredd, you and I have been talking about all sorts of stuff. I think the one thing, if we talk about a theme in Europe that has us excited, that we know has viewers excited, it's going to be Luminosity.
Yeah, absolutely. Standout performances and clearly a roster that we had a lot to talk about when looking at the preseason invitational. But I would be willing to say they are the most improved team, and I think that is it's a bold statement considering how skilled they were the first time we got a glance at them under 79. Right. But they truly have taken what I would say is the best of their already strengths, which was dealing with chaos as individuals and finding a way to build an actual team out of it, right? And that is, I would say, hands down part of the reason that they are so successful here so far for EMEA.
Right, we talk about I think it's amazing to see, I have a feeling they harnessed just how much success they had in disadvantageous positions in Poland, to the point where we were talking about them throughout the entire weekend. As we jump into game number 7 here for the EMEA region.
Yeah, and just for anybody at home that maybe if you missed out on some of those past performances here from Luminosity and why we have so much kind of hype in talking about what they've been able to do with their backs against the wall, if you look at just what we heard the analyst desk talking about with the clip from Imperial How, we've seen this roster do things just like that on multiple occasions, right? And that is why they are such a focal point here for us.
Huge shout out to the observing team here, the local squad, Ansvar and crew, for letting us see exactly what that Luminosity drop looked like, because if you caught yesterday's matches, we were certainly interested in if they're still getting that split drop at Epicenter and Refinery. Just now, based on the trails, it didn't look like they were getting challenged, but that's something we're going to look at through the rest of the day today in Europe.
Yeah, it's actually really exciting that we already know, at least on game number 1, if somebody was going to give the curveball, give the mix-up. It seems like that would have been the case. The information should be there. You had the opportunity to watch the VODs, and more importantly, I think yesterday you had multiple opportunities to see a dropship that would have indicated the decision-making without isolating Luminosity Gaming, right? Because you got to consider the fact that because we aren't seeing everything happening all the time, to study your opponents, you may not actually know what everybody's always doing, right? So that dropship is the, the make or break that if nobody adjusts, I personally think, you got nobody else to blame but yourself.
Absolutely, and just saw look at Reciprocity EU. It's Skyhook. Keep in mind, Reciprocity coming in a pretty good position as well. They're in second place right now with 57 points. That puts them 6 points above Kick in third.
Yeah, Reciprocity EU especially has been a pretty pleasant surprise here, I feel like, at this event. Being able to close out a lot of their games, hold their own. This is one of our few glances that we have been able to get here of the Mirage Voyage, and as a guy who sadly was on an airplane when that patch came out, I'm still excited to be able to get my own hands on it.
It's a good time. Let me tell you, I've had a little bit of time on the Mirage Voyage, and a little bit like Las Vegas, I think you have to limit your hours on the Mirage Voyage.
Yeah.
But it's a good time. You'll find some pretty ridiculous scenes on the ship, without a doubt.
It's a test of self-control here with the Mirage Voyage. One thing that we can talk about here, though, is we have gotten indication, thanks to Samsung Morning Stars there, of our circle. It is a very clearly heavily weighted towards Capital City. It doesn't need to necessarily end 100% directly on usually those southern buildings, but very, very likely if it isn't on Capital City, going to be just on the outskirts there.
Yep. And that's going to give our northern teams a little bit of time to get over to Capital City, determine exactly how they want to get into that area. You're going to have a lot of ways to do it. However, our southern teams, as we just saw some teams at Thermal, we saw some teams at Lava City, they're going to need to, and especially you're going to expect it in Europe, head up there a little bit earlier, avoid those late chokes, because we saw yesterday in both regions, when you do choose to take places like Underpass, Depot, and the like late in the game, it is only going to get increasingly harder by the minute.
Yeah, and I know we've been talking a lot of the early game decision-making out of Luminosity, but this is another example where I think it'll be really interesting to see what their thought process is, due to the fact that most of the zones that they've been able to rotate towards typically are going to be towards that eastern northern side or directly towards the south. They've never really had to do this, or at least we haven't gotten a glance at their direct perspective through Capital City, which we know I would argue is probably the hardest area to traverse when it is the focus of so many teams, and it very clearly is here in game number 1 today.
Certainly, in talking to pro players leading up to this event, we talked a little bit about it yesterday, but you also have a lot of complications with the multi-tiered buildings. These are not the same as pushing a Kings Canyon hut that is made of a few boards that you can shoot through and you can get on the roof and you can see right into the shanty towns. These are multi-tiered structures, and it adds even more hesitancy and necessary care as you push through these buildings.
Yeah, and I can't help but feel like to some extent, the thought process was with the introduction of crypto, that might be a way to be able to deal with pushing into some of those buildings, right, with that multiple tier. But the teams here clearly not feeling as if crypto is going to be a big enough threat to be able to introduce even after his buffs. Gambit here, though, struggling on the outskirts. They're one of the few teams to try and make this first trek, right? It feels like, hopefully, though, they do not leave themselves a trail of blood on their transition in.
And they are typically a sorting drop, so they've made pretty good progress already, making sure that they got past that midline, getting up through sorting. Whether they took, we didn't see exactly if they took the Ridge or if they took through Depot. However, the fact that they've crossed that is really all that matters at that point for them.
Yeah, again, that's been the focus for a lot of these European teams, and I was wondering yesterday if maybe that would shift a skosh when looking towards North America just because of some of that aggression, but it didn't seem like it was the case. A lot of these teams are very, very focused on those early rotations, and again, understandably so.
Yep, and this is actually now going to be Papega Squadron, who has taken, and we saw it yesterday as well, the Ridge Choke, a very comfortable place. Once again, these Watson fences are really just a statement, more of a declaration than they are tactical fences that are actually going to block anyone from truly pushing through them. They can kind of hold this area. Lots of damage, though, for Fjellder, and he's going to have to take a seat and heal up a bit. But this is a spot that we expect, certainly, especially with a Capital City end circle, that a team to hold for as long as they can.
Yeah, and it should be noted that depending on what that final circle could be, we did actually get a Capital City yesterday, and it, conveniently enough, it's actually Luminosity who ended up winning that just on the outskirts of that construction building. If we consider the positioning we just got from that last team, they could, if it does make that southern trickle over, they may not have to force their way into actual Capital City, and that could be a great place to hold there for Papega Squad.
Taking a look here once again at Reciprocity EU. Already laying claim to some buildings. We also saw, if you caught it just a moment ago, we did see Fnatic EU, who has that southwesternmost building, the one just to the left of construction. Already they have that rooftop. You could say the most desirable spot, really, for your capital city late game until you're forced off of it. I would not expect Fnatic EU to be moving off unless absolutely forced out.
Yeah, be able to be their home for a short period of time here. Our glance at Reciprocity, though, looks like they have found themselves a target. It looked like the opener there, they did get the opening knock. Oh, excuse me, Lazarus. Now we get our glance here at Reciprocity. They're just chilling.
Yeah, a bit more north, and they're going to have a lot of time here. I mean, the biggest things they're going to be worrying about is really trying to get a few picks here. Very unlikely at this stage that they're still going to have teams rotating in behind them from places like Skyhook, Drill, and even Epicenters. More likely that they're going to be seeing action coming up through Capital City at this stage.
And Lazarus, as we do channel back here towards them, are struggling to be able to deal with that skirmish. It looked good for a moment. It's Kick actually in hot pursuit, tracking them down, forcing them through that channel. To be honest, I feel like if we are going to see a turnaround moment here for Lazarus, I would like to see them do it in that tight corridor somehow with the grenades, because otherwise there's no territorial advantage you're going to be able to gain, and clearly you're already down the manpower 33%, losing yourself post-kill so very early.
And not surprised to see Lazarus decide not to go straight into Mine Pass and blindly go through that choke near the vault, instead going to wait here just around a little bit of a loop around this rock. You see a lot, even if you don't have end circles here, you do see a lot of action at this area. Right now they're trying to play this as slow as they can and see if they can maybe even be the team that goes in behind Kick at Mine Pass, which I think at this stage they wouldn't be opposed to.
Yeah, and it looks like post-kill banner pickup is going to be the play there. And the question I have is, if you do go for that, do you risk doing that without a portal? And I can't help but feel like there is no way that you do not. But Kick does seem to be less maybe hungry as they once looked there. Comfortable with just the one pick-off, knowing that post-kill is unlikely to get picked up, and just kind of defending outward there on that banner. But here's our first glance in this game at Virtus Pro, who has found themselves onto the southwestern corner here of Capital City.
This gives you an idea. We talked about this area, the ridge that is being held by Papega Squadron. This gives you an idea that you really can't shoot into much of it. There's a little bit of that low ground and a little bit of rocks on each side of the choke that is going to give the side of Papega Squadron pretty ample opportunities to disengage whenever they want, but also some action at underpasses. Teams are going to come up through Geyser Dread. We talked a lot about that choke as well yesterday.
Yeah, that one's a very tricky one that right now Virtus Pro has a pretty good advantage that if anybody really pressures out of the Geyser, whatever that team is, becomes an Oreo sandwich very, very quickly. Yeah. And you never want to be the filling of an Oreo, because you know that's the thing that gets eaten first.
Always, without a doubt.
Honestly, I could use some Oreo and milk right now.
We can listen in now with Papega Squadron. We do have comms coming in from their stream, so we'll see how things sound as they need to make their way through this choke.
Yep. I feel like this side is way better if we can get control over it. We have Gibby.
Nothing's happening. Just speak slowly so they don't see you.
Come on. I designed it to hurt anyone outside of it.
I hear them.
Yeah, they're close.
They're in containers. Yeah, Wraith in containers. That's not VP. Purple Wraith. They're getting shot in their side. Nade these guys.
Arcan, this one arc. 60 damage.
26 white on the Wraith. On the screen.
This is the other side of that battle. On the low ground here, it is Hot Drop's Taskmaster, the one we're glancing in here with right now. Just having a wingman Peacekeeper, no attachment for that wingman, and can't really totally tell how much ammo, but it didn't seem like too much there in the heavy department. But look at this. Papega Squadron actually getting out of their high ground territory here with a Wraith portal, not wanting to deal with being in the middle of, it feels like, everything here. But look, it's somebody on the other side of that portal. But the Papega Squad hold on here for now. One knock.
Yeah, and maybe that Gibby Q comes down just a little bit late in that scenario, as they, as you said yesterday, just portaling into nowhere, and all of them taking a significant amount of damage here, and they are going to have to fight out of this in just a moment.
The push is coming through here. That's Virtus Pro, and they want to get it. Look at that easy wipe over, but it's going to come at a cost. Noth unable to even get his ultimate off. VP Taylor, only one alive here with 50% HP, and look at the push coming down from that high ground. Taylor, one shot left, and that is all she wrote for Virtus Pro.
And that is, I mean, a perfect example of exactly what we're talking about. Teams are so hesitant on how and when you time that push through the choke. Even though we saw Papega Squadron having control, they thought maybe that was the time to portal and drop that Gibby ult. And you even heard him during the comm saying, we can take our time, we can make the push, we have Gibby. And in the end, the timing was not there, and everyone collapses immediately. And right there, you do see both Papego Squadron and Virtus Pro paying the price.
Hot Drops do end up holding on in what normally you would look at as a very struggling circumstance before that fight happened, right? Considering that Taskmasters were on the low ground and trying to deal with that, but very impressive that they're able to hold their own. A team here that is still yet to really make a name for themselves, not even sitting within our top 10 here so far, so definitely a big win in day number 2 here for them. Now our glance over back in Na'Vi, a team who's been struggling all week long.
Look at the shots there from 9 Impulse. Beautiful spray with the 99 from the hip. He's forced back to Phoenix as well, but some great shots there that immediately send his opponents retreating. That was going to be Soar that was engaging them.
See what the rebuttal play is here. R99 Peacekeeper means very good close-range battling here for Impulse.
Especially if he keeps hitting 100 sprays with that 99, his team will be in a good place. But now we're talking about a team that Onset said he wants to see more from. I think we all certainly do. It's G2, and they are in a tough spot as they're trying to get out of Train, through Tunnel, into even the conversation in Capital City.
Yeah, and even with this Resurrection going off, even if this shielding everything comes through, it's unlikely they'll be able to hold their own. Alliance, the ones threatening, as this Caustic Ultimate's going to come out. I mean, that is the beginning of the end. No way you can make your way out of that if you get choked.
Let's go ahead and see what Alliance can do here. As a reminder, Alliance sitting pretty good in the table. They're in 4th place.
Wow. Honestly, this is actually super concerning. The fact that Mimu has been able to heal up completely and there's been no threat when it comes to the HP generally for 0-0 and things like Alliance really need to be able to step it up on this push. Gibraltar's shield goes down. And here we go, G2 with the counterattack.
Absolutely. They might even have, we'll have, not sure exactly what's in these death boxes, but they might even have a swap or 2 in there. So like you said, Alliance
Gibraltar
letting the slow heals come in, and they took their time and they did not make the push.
And Gibraltar Ultimate actually missed, I believe. He threw it right on top of himself, which means none of the actual missiles coming down is going to be a direct threat to Alliance. You want to get that on the outskirts so that they're forced to move into you, and then it's a lose-lose scenario.
Alliance still, though, actually rotates all the way towards the east as they're going to continue along the southern wall of the Capital City area proper, and I think G2's going to get out of jail in a pretty bizarre set of circumstances there.
No, that's a whole lot of how are we where we are right now in this game. My goodness here. But the fact that they are able to hold their own, very well done for G2. I can understand the thought process of letting them go, but it's more so the lack of aggression for a moment there.
Let's see. Is it still... Now, you do have Luminosity here in this southwestern... now in construction. I believe we should still have Fnatic EU on the building that we did just see G2 zipping on. So we'll keep an eye on all these battles. Yes, indeed. Fnatic EU still does have... Now they've moved to top of construction. They're going to be comfortable here.
And we got to have a serious conversation about Tisanya and his devotion priority. No, that is not the person we're looking at here, but almost every time we look at him, he is focusing on that devotion. One of the few players here that seems to put it as nearly priority number 1. And I think that's such an interesting state because, again, this roster is very unorthodox. They kind of just do their own thing and they make it look fantastic.
Yep. Now also looking at the Wizen side, we saw quite a bit of them yesterday. They're actually sitting in 6th as one of our qualified teams. Certainly need to be happy about that, but know they have a long road to go today as well. 6 games in total.
Yeah, and the weird thing about Wizen is that they are basically a non-killing team. Their placements have been absolutely fantastic. 27 of their 40 points have been earned through the placements, meaning that in the entirety of the whole tournament, they've actually only gotten 13 kills through 6 games so far.
And the only team in the top 7 without a win.
Yes, and it's even crazier to consider the fact that when you compare them to others of that point caliber, right, when you're like 13 kills, well, what's the guy above them have? 24. Guy above that, 23, 27. Everybody's sitting in that 20 mark. So Wizen has been this like pacifist successor that has been able to make it all the way through. But they got to find a way to be able to close it out. Otherwise, I can't help but feel like that 7th place is going to just keep slowly falling behind the remainder of the pack.
Yep, Samsung Morning Stars there on your screen for a moment. They are in 10th. And certainly with some consistent performances today, could see themselves not only with a respectable placing, but even in the money. Here's Kick now. Excuse me, this is going to be Fnatic EU up top.
They have a portal place. I don't know where the other side actually going to lead to that other rooftop if they would like to make that transition. And this is one of those interesting moments, I think, bringing it back to the conversation Onset had yesterday about the to Wraith or not to Wraith, right? This is one of those examples of a transition where the Wraith is nearly unstoppable. Nobody can make that as smooth as she would be able to do so, but that's for this round, right? Let's look at the next round. Would that be a circle where Wraith is going to be viable or valuable? And because typically they're moving to those outskirts, those open areas, it is generally speaking, suffering here when it comes to the viability. But we'll find out. Fnatic still well postured up here as round 4 coming to a close. And the action's about to heat up. This should force a lot of teams here to get into battle.
Now taking a look at hot drops as they are flying in together. All sorts of Gibby ults coming down. They need to be careful. That will be Taskmaster, who does go down, as we take a look to see if his teammates can stick this one out.
Yeah, great job being able to find a way to get back into his own bubble as well. We do see the circle moving in here, getting a lot of damage. Taskmaster 1 tick away from actually going down. He will end up following both of his teammates, taking 1 extra tick. Watson 1 hit away there. Now both getting into a battle. As you see, the shielding is in fact the thing moving down, but that is going to be the end of it there in a very tough situation.
Yes, indeed. We're also looking at Na'Vi. You see Claws there. Getting res. Also Faizu and 9 Impulse now. Holding on and still having what looks like a moment to pop some heals off and decide where they want to rotate next. But Fnatic EU still on the very back of top construction. This is really the only part of the building left in the zone. And like you said, Dread, it's only a matter of time before they need to make that decision of just how expensive they make this rotation out.
Yeah, and look at this here for Gambit, man. They are struggling in this situation. We did see the knock go down onto the 1 target, and a corner of the next circle actually sits in. What is that? The double headshot coming out from the wingman. Sunset is absolutely nutty there with his wingman play.
Great shots, and that's what we need to see from the Gambit side. They're in 13th right now, and a team that certainly expecting to see a better performance from them. Keep in mind, 11th overall in Poland out of 80 teams.
Yeah, them and Gamers Origin, I can't help but feel like are some of the bigger disappointments looking at the EMEA region purely based on past results from those teams. So it's really nice to be able to get a bit there from Gambit, but back with Alliance, we do see after forfeiting that battle, not able to hold their own too much here with still 13 squads, only have ourselves 1 target alive, but in the middle of the final circle here, is round 5 seconds out from coming to a close.
And Lyman's going to come back and say, I don't have good news about where this portal ends. As you can see right now, maybe not too anxious to take it. If he's going to take it, they're going to do it together. Now, Reciprocity still with some pretty good control, still having this elevation. Look at the wing shots coming in from Morax. Those were well placed and clean. Then there was not much time to land those. You saw, of course, in this late game in Capital City, landing shots like that are going to be the difference.
And everybody here trying to battle. There's so many thermite grenades going down. We see the pressure of the circle forcing everybody in position. Peacekeeper shot 1, going to break the armor. 74, 1 shot more onto that Gibraltar as he clips that with the wingman. 1 tick and he's just dipping back and forth, able to hold his own. Sunset, the only one alive. He's got to go into the rift, but I don't think he's going to be able to make it out as he finds himself a tick of damage there from the circle medkit attempt.
And he's going to get it.
What?
And there's just enough action going on, as you can see, around him that he's going to get this off. Does he also have a bat? We'll see. Looks like going to instead, with 10 cells, just go ahead and heal with these cells, maybe get back into the fray. Also, G2 under some more trouble in the kill feed.
Just within that amount of time of healing up in that situation, Gambit went from 9th to literally 5th. Points placement-wise, just colossally skyrocketed.
That might be the most valuable Wraith Q points-wise we've seen.
I've ever seen.
Yes.
Outside of maybe, you know, Imperial Howl yesterday. You could argue that 1v1, but very few gain the value that has. But here we see, again, that kind of boxed house I was talking about yesterday, the main tower here at Capital City, a very difficult one to be able to battle in. So many little kind of corridors like you see here.
And so anyway, I mean, you can have teams kind of poking over all these half-height cover, right? Poking in and out of these different bar areas with these countertops. It can get really messy in this area, and expect, once again, the 99s and the Peacekeepers, like you see on your screen now, to shine.
But look at this, man. Na'Vi, very well geared, very well positioned. Cooler as well, holding their own pretty well. But the fact that Na'Vi, again, a name that has been a bit amiss so far through today, holding their own in this final circle, as we do see, I believe that is the threat coming out from Na'Vi to get the knock onto Jazz. We see Xcafu actually losing all of his shielding, have to back out, drop a bat.
Yep, able to luckily fast kill there is Xcafu, which allowed really that respawn to come in unchallenged.
Things are going to be fine here. Only 3 squads remain. Na'Vi actually find themselves at Gibraltar now very, very low. 1 tick away from actually dropping.
9 Impulse with some great shots there again with a 99.
He actually has no bullets remaining in that 99. That's 8 in total. Somebody has to give him light. 2 left, and he is going to be completely out. But he does have a Peacekeeper as the spare. Not too shabby considering the distance they're going to have to take here. 2 squads left, full 3v3. It's Na'Vi up against Cooler.
Here we go, one of the rare 1v1s we're seeing at this late in the game actually going to play out here. There's the first knock there. That's Faizu that goes down. Can they get the second? Yes, indeed. Claus goes down as well, looking for the third, hunting it down, flying around the corner. Haven't found it just yet,
and
though.
Excafu actually takes a really bad trade, considering that it's a 1 versus 3 here for a moment. I don't think it's going to be too problematic, but both him and Jazz very, very low. Jazz takes the trade, ends up getting the knock there, and the clean cut through. Very well done from Cooler, of all teams here, finding themselves a victory after a very difficult day number 1.
Very difficult indeed. If we take a look exactly where Cooler is on the table, 17th. Certainly not the team that we expected to be able to sneak that one out, but in the end, it's Lager, Jazz, and Excafu that are able to take game number 7 in Europe, and that is a pretty fantastic result for them, and maybe tease them up for a much more successful Sunday.
It's just crazy because when looking at the top half of the EMEA bracket, right, like, or where we sit within the standings, we were already talking about how win-heavy the top half of this looks. Every one of them was walked away with a W, and it's very clearly here are the winners of Europe, and here's the remainder of, it feels like, the rest of the group. But considering game number 1 and day number 2, the final battle was between 15th and 17th,
right?
Which is very, very different of a case. And I wonder if that's something that will continue through today, or if it was a kind of a freak case.
Absolutely. You and I talked about how we were expecting maybe Europe to continue to be win-heavy, but let's throw out all that out the window. We're going to have a wild ride here in the analyst desk. What do you guys think?
I think you guys raised a very good point there, that final battle was between 15th and 17th place. And so it's the bottom teams in that first game for EMEA of the second half of their tournament that are starting to show up a bit. Glitter, Onset, over to you.
Yeah, and that's something that we were talking about earlier, too. These teams that are at the bottom of the leaderboard really, really need to be doing something. The top 3 teams for that final game were teams that we haven't seen anything from at all.
Cooler, like I can't remember if I've seen them on the leaderboard at all.
Yeah, I mean, the French contingent managed to close it out at the end there, and a shout out to them, but I think the final comment there from Bravo is absolutely perfect, because we were kind of expecting a pattern of play to continue from yesterday. Forget all that. Like, this is completely different. This is a completely different day, and I attribute that maybe to having this break between the first 6 games and today. Teams have been able to go away and look at how they want to approach the game, and it's 2 teams that we weren't expecting to be in that final 2 battle, who one of them gets the victory, and all of a sudden the table looks a little bit different.
Glitter, gee, sorry, we've just heard a booming voice in the studio, which is throwing us off slightly. Our producer just dealing with some things. Anyway, Glitter, what I wanted to ask you was, do you agree with Onset's assessment? Do you think there was a level of adaptation there, or were there also fortunate circumstances or good engagements? Just how did Cooler end up winning, so to speak?
Definitely a combination of all of the above. I think, and I had said it to you when we were watching, I was shocked that the first game we get a city ending that was completely outside of the majority of the buildings in city. So like that already was... And that was a nice way, at least from my perspective, to start the games, because it keeps everything interesting. But that's one of those scenarios where it's all about the positioning, because there was only that final corner down below at the bottom of the building that people had as far as cover goes. Otherwise, you're out in the middle of the street, and it's just about knowing when to push at the right time and use the cover at the right time and kind of catch people on the back foot, and it worked out in their favor.
It's about holding on to your resources as well in those final moments. If you have a Gibraltar Dome, you have to wait till the final moment to use that, because not only is it giving you that cover, when you get into that final skirmish, you get those quick heals when you're inside it as well, and you can get those shields off a little bit quicker than your opponent. So it's about timing, it's about holding on to every single resource you have and engaging at just the right time. And for then, it was Cooler who managed to do that best right at the end there, and that was the difference between the 2 teams.
As the old saying goes.
What's the saying?
Never give up, never let go, keep it cool. Let's head over to the scoreboard, everybody. Cooler Esports. Oh, okay, Cooler ended up getting 2nd overall due to 5 less kills than Na'Vi. Glitter, you look...
This is what I've been talking
excited,
about.
Yeah.
Well, because Cooler won, but they still don't pull down first place because they didn't have as many kills as Na'Vi did. So the kills matter so much.
That was the same situation as Alliance and LG and
exactly.
Right?
Can we just take a look at this leaderboard and compare it to yesterday? Na'Vi first, Cooler Esports 2nd, Gambit 3rd, Hot Drops 4th, G2
yeah.
5th. So and then, none of these teams were even... We weren't even talking about these teams yesterday.
Nope.
And then you look at the other side of the table, Luminosity Gaming 13th, VP 11th. Wizen Papega.
If I remember correctly, though, Luminosity did get off to a slightly slower start yesterday. They built their consistency over the course of all 6 games.
No, they did well game 1.
Did they do well game 1?
They won game 1.
Well, guys, in that case, I'm completely incorrect. And over to my analyst.
Sometimes it's the safest way to play it. Sometimes it's the safest way to play it. But this is, I mean, the leaderboard after match 7 is still the top 2 teams, but there's every single point now, difference has closed completely. I mean, you look at it there, 75 points total for Luminosity Gaming. You go down to 10th place, 39. That's one big game. If they take out Luminosity early and Papega Squadron have a big game, all of a sudden everything changes. This is completely blown open, this EMEA region, after just one game. If you have another game where we have these upsets and the bottom of the table teams start putting in performances, when it gets down to those last 4, 3, 2, 1 games, we could find ourselves in a position that whoever has the best game in our final game could be our champion.
Glitter, final thoughts with yourself?
What I noticed is that out of those the top 7, the only team that did anything yesterday on that list was Reciprocity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So teams are shaking things up. I'm here for it.
I am also here for this. It's what we spoke about in the pre-match segment. We want to see those lower down teams show that they were competitive and really start to put it on the rest of the competition. Do not go anywhere. We'll be back with match 2 very shortly.